I'm calling this short piece Random Reflections on Bion, Past, Present and Future. Not a structured piece in any way. According to Chinese calculations, 100 years ago, Bion had reached the age of 7.5 months. We cannot know what his prenatal life was like, but his mother must have suffered many anxieties and difficulties in the hostile and, by our present-day standards, primitive conditions of northwest India in the late 19th century. Women in that situation needed to be strong and courageous, both physically and mentally. How would any of us nowadays cope with years of extreme heat, isolation, the proximity of wild animals, poisonous snakes and spiders, no emergency medical help, primitive sanitation, no refrigeration, no telephones? I could go on, but I begin to frighten myself. Frederick Bion, his father, was a pioneer, a man of courage, an irrigation engineer, a builder of dams, who had a close relationship with his Indian colleagues and workers. Perhaps the thought that in England her son would be protected from the dangers of life in India made their parting, when he was 8 years old, more tolerable for his mother. But did she know how longingly he would think of home while suffering the miseries of prep school? However, his parental inheritance endowed him with the fortitude he needed and displayed throughout his life. He also possessed the qualities essential in a truly civilized human being: tolerance, restraint, curiosity, and a capacity for sympathetic concern for the individual. He became as much of a pioneer and empire builder as his father had been, improving the quality of life by turning the parched land of the mind into fertile soil. During the last 4 days of meetings, we have been fortunate to enjoy some of the fruits of the many years of work and experience of those who have been influenced by Bion, both personally and through his writings. This kind of communication is essential. Without it, the work becomes as ephemeral as our lives. To quote Bion, "If we cannot communicate with our contemporaries, we are even less likely to be able to communicate with our successors. If this communication cannot be made, the future development of analysis is imperiled, and the successful discoveries made so far could be lost to the world." As this is not an analytic session, we can, with impunity, indulge in remembering the past and expressing our hopes, fears, and desires for the future, while enjoying the challenges and rewards of the present. Bion hoped that his work provided a positive stimulus to thinking about and understanding the human psyche. But he did not regard his contribution as more than a very small drop in an exceedingly large ocean. Nevertheless, that drop can create far-reaching disturbances. Some of those caught in the turbulence may decide never again to leave the reassurance of stable, dry land beneath their feet. But others brave the waves and find the challenge well worth the struggle. Bion was well acquainted with the painful nature of thinking. As he said in Paris in 1978, "I don't like thinking. But it is very important to dare to think and feel whatever you do think or feel, never mind how much it is not scientific." So it was no surprise to him to encounter this dislike in others. Although he did not welcome austerity, a quiet life is always a seductive fantasy, he accepted it as an unavoidable part of the job. In the modern idiom, it goes with the territory. However, he was impatient with and intolerant of the clashes, splits, and struggles for precedence within the institutions. He thought them a sad waste of valuable time. And he certainly wanted to distance himself from the opposing forces which aimed, on the one hand, to thrust upon him the role of a messiah or deity, and on the other, to stress his failings and defects, even his madness. He often quoted from Ecclesiasticus from the Bible, the quotation, "The wisdom of a learned man cometh by opportunity of leisure." The verse continues, "He that hath little business shall become wise." In this age of busyness, of ever-increasing technological wizardry, of speed and noise, it becomes impossible to hear ourselves think. In spite of the use of more and more sophisticated, labor-saving devices, there seems to be less and less time for leisure, for luxuriating in reverie in the ordinary sense of that word, for recharging our mental batteries, for converting experience into wisdom. How are we to become wise when so much emphasis is placed on cleverness, to building increasingly complex substitutes for thought? Where does wisdom come on a scale measuring success? Will putting up a space probe on Mars make us wiser? Science fiction has already become science fact, but what has happened to concern for the individual? Is it being smothered by this apparently unstoppable flood of machines and substitutes for people? I often fear so. Having aired that particular bee in my bonnet, I turn to Bion's contribution to the supply of wisdom. I have often been asked how he had the time to write so much. He had formidable mental stamina and the single-minded approach of an explorer to his work. But to achieve that, he needed to be freed from as many of the distracting, time-consuming concerns of everyday life as possible. To name but a few: finances, accounts, income tax returns, travel arrangements, correspondence, and the limiting of calls on his professional life. He needed to be mentally fresh enough each day to do the best possible work with his patients, out of which grew his written work. As I came to know him and his needs, I undertook more and more of the tasks that would have diverted him away from creative thinking and writing. He believed that the human unit is a couple. As he said, all human beings are imperfect creatures. So there are two imperfect beings, and the problem is whether these two halves make one whole or not. We too were fortunate in becoming one whole. It was a fulfilling, rewarding, and precious experience, alleviating the fundamental loneliness of the individual. It was a struggle to persuade him to spend time on professional correspondence, though this usually required only rapid, brief dictation or merely a suggestion to say such and such. Nor did he welcome a request from me to read through my edited transcripts of his books. Even work on the key to a memoir of the future, which was, after all, part of the main book, had its stormy moments, principally because it entailed rereading the text. But he was always ultimately contrite. How do you stand it, he would ask. And the answer to that question was obvious. He confided in me his doubts and fears, his feelings of inadequacy, but he loved his work and would not have changed it for any other. When he was writing or sunk in deep thought, I learnt not to interrupt him, except in an emergency, such as announcing dinner is served. I never tried, the house is on fire. But if his phlegmatic response to the Californian earthquake of 1972, I think it was any indication of what for him constituted an emergency, I fear it would have been ineffective. The main body of his theoretical work was produced prior to our move to Los Angeles. But the work that followed during the next 12 years was also of great importance. I have spoken elsewhere of his reasons for leaving England. He did not leave in order to retire from the practice of psychoanalysis, nor as a money-making exercise, nor to spend a sybaritic existence in the Californian sunshine. The writing he did between 1968 and 1979 had a vigorous, illuminating, refreshing quality in keeping with his new surroundings. The autobiography and the memoir of the future would never have been written had he remained in England. The breadth of his vision in the trilogy is breathtaking. It spreads before us his life's experiences, insights, loves, hates, fears and hopes in a staggering display of verbal son et lumière. It weaves past, present and future into a vivid and highly disturbing tapestry. 6 months after arriving in California, Bion was asked to work for 2 weeks in Buenos Aires, as you have heard from Dr. Brendan. The beginning of his continuing relationship with South America. Here he encountered yet another culture, one with European roots and a Latin flavor in its liveliness. He felt at ease with the people and was thrilled by their music. He always treasured the recording given him by the 5 Abalos brothers who performed for his benefit. The account of the show given in his honor can be found in the published letters, The Other Side of Genius. The work he did in Buenos Aires had lasting and wide-ranging benefits, notably the publication of Introduction to the Work of Bion. Almost 30 years later, I am happy to say that 2 of the authors, as we know, are here with us today, Dr. Grinberg and Dr. Bion. When Bion died in 1979, I thought my life was over, but I discovered that although I was bereft of his physical presence, he left behind a large part of himself, which continues to be very much alive. The love and support of my growing family have been a blessing and a gift. I am proud of their successes in their various professions. We are, of course, sad that Grandpa knew only 1 of his 6 grandchildren. I've been favoured with good health and, so far, a clear mind. Consequently, I've been able and privileged to edit 7 more publications of Bion's work during the last 18 years. The 2 most recent books were published in time for this conference, thanks to Cesare Socialotti's drive and enthusiasm, and to the highly concentrated and skilled work of Eric and Clara King of Communication Crafts. We are grateful to them for the punctual and healthy arrival of the war memoirs, so apt an addition to this centennial year celebration. Special thanks and congratulations are also due to those, and especially to Silvio Lergiai. I would like to have added Parthenope. I would like to have added Parthenope, but when I suggested it, she said, wait for it. She said, I have done very little, and I dare not argue with her about it. So many people have made this occasion not only possible, but also a successful and memorable occasion. I know how much effort, determination, and sustained optimism in the face of many difficulties had been invested in that achievement for over 2 years. The future, as far as Bion was concerned, began in 1979 and has continued in a way of which he would have approved. He has not been elevated to the sainthood, nor has he been loaded with honours and sunk without a trace. His work has endured as a valuable part of the body of research into the intricacies of the human mind. The following quotation from 1977, included in the new book Taming Wild Thoughts, could well have been written about himself. Quote, "We are familiar with Freud's attempt to build up a system. We are also familiar with the fact that he felt that he had not completed his system or what he was capable of. The problem has to be passed on, delegated to his survivors. The inheritance passes to others who might be called his professional family, his professional colleagues." Finally, a valuable word of warning from the last year of his life. I have quoted this elsewhere, for I believe it merits frequent repetition. Quote, "Comparing my own personal experience with the history of psychoanalysis, and even the history of human thought, it does seem to be rather ridiculous that one finds oneself in a position of being supposed to be in that line of succession, instead of just one of the units in it. It is still more ridiculous that one is expected to participate in a sort of competition for precedence as to who is top. Top of what? Where does it come in this history? Where does psychoanalysis itself come? What is the dispute about? I'm always hearing, as I always have done, that I am a Kleinian, that I am crazy. Is it possible to be interested in that sort of dispute? I find it very difficult to see how this could possibly be relevant against the background of the struggle of the human being to emerge from barbarism and a purely animal existence to something one could call a civilized society. I think it might be useful if we were to remind ourselves of the scale of the thing in which we are engaged, and whereabouts a little niche could be occupied by ourselves." Thank you.